The Guardian's nose. What if the thin line between life and death wasn't measured in heartbeats or brain waves, but in the quivering of a wet, black nose? The fluorescent lights of Horizon Medical Center's ICU cast harsh shadows across Olivia Martinez's pale face as Apollo pressed his muzzle against the observation window. His amber eyes narrowed, tracking the movement of the white-coated figure adjusting his partner's IV line. The Belgian Malinois' muscles tensed beneath his tawny coat, a low growl building in his throat. Something was wrong. "Easy, boy," Jason whispered, tugging gently on the leash, but Apollo's ears remained pinned back, his body rigid as steel. Through the glass, Olivia lay motionless, surrounded by beeping monitors and hanging IV bags, her usually vibrant presence reduced to a collection of digital readouts and plastic tubes. Just 18 hours ago, they'd been working their regular patrol at Westridge International Airport, Apollo's keen nose leading them through the labyrinth of terminals and security checkpoints. The scent had hit Apollo first, that sharp chemical tang that always meant trouble. Olivia had trusted his instincts, as she had for the past 4 years. They'd tracked the suspect to Terminal B, where a smuggling operation went catastrophically wrong. Now Olivia fought for her life, and Apollo couldn't shake the feeling that the danger wasn't over. Dr. Winters adjusted something in Olivia's IV line, and Apollo's growl intensified. Jason Reeves, Olivia's colleague from the 9 unit, tugged on the leash again, but the dog wouldn't budge. There was something familiar about the doctor's movements, something that triggered a memory from the airport terminal. Apollo couldn't make his temporary handler understand. "I know you're worried about her," Jason said, kneeling beside Apollo. "We all are, but Liv is in good hands." The words meant nothing to Apollo. All he knew was that the same scent from the airport, chemical, dangerous, wrong, now clung to Dr. Winters' scrubs, and every time the doctor entered Olivia's room, her vital signs would mysteriously decline. A petite woman in blue scrubs paused at the nurse's station, her attention drawn to Apollo's unusual behavior. Dr. Sophia Park had worked with therapy dogs in the pediatric ward and knew that 9 officers were different, their instincts honed by years of training and experience. The way Apollo tracked Dr. Winters' movements wasn't anxiety or simple separation distress. This was something else. "Has he been acting like this with all the medical staff?" she asked Jason, approaching carefully. "No, just started today, and only with—" Jason was cut off by the sudden wail of Olivia's heart monitor. Through the glass they watched Dr. Winters rush to her bedside, barking orders as her vitals plummeted. Apollo lunged forward, nearly pulling Jason off his feet. His bark echoed through the sterile hallway, a sound Olivia would have recognized instantly. It wasn't his alert bark for drugs or explosives. This was a warning, the same one he'd given seconds before the gunfire at the airport. Dr. Park's eyes narrowed as she watched Dr. Winters frantically adjust Olivia's medication. "Officer Reeves, how long have you known Dr. Winters?" "Since Liv was admitted last night." "Why?" "Because I've worked in this ICU for 4 years," she said slowly, "and I have never seen him before today." Apollo's barking reached a fever pitch as Dr. Winters glanced through the observation window. For a split second, his eyes met Apollo's, and something flickered there. Recognition, fear, hatred. Then he was moving fast and purposeful toward the service elevator at the end of the hall. "Stop him!" Dr. Park shouted, but Apollo was already in motion. 4 years of training, countless hours of pursuit and apprehension drills, all leading to this moment. The imposter had hurt his partner once. He wouldn't get a second chance. The elevator doors were closing when Apollo broke free from his leash. Jason's shout and Dr. Park's gasp faded behind him as he raced down the hallway, his claws clicking against the polished floor. He had one chance to prevent what his keen senses had been warning him about all along. Olivia always said Apollo was more than just a police dog. He was her guardian angel. As he launched himself through the narrowing gap of the elevator doors, Apollo knew one thing with absolute certainty. Guardian angels didn't take coffee breaks, and they sure as hell didn't give up on their partners. The last thing Jason and Dr. Park heard before the elevator doors slammed shut was the unmistakable sound of Apollo's powerful jaws meeting their target, followed by a very human scream of pain and surprise. The hunt that began at Westridge International was about to end in an elevator at Horizon Medical, and this time, Apollo wasn't letting his quarry escape. Olivia's life depended on it. Blood dripped from the fake doctor's arm as hospital security pinned him against the elevator wall. Apollo hadn't let go until Jason's voice commanded release through the opening doors. And even then, the Belgian Malinois kept his muscled body between the suspect and the exit, hackles raised, ready to strike again. "Jesus Christ," breathed one of the security guards, eyeing the torn sleeve of Dr. Winter's scrubs. "That dog means business." Dr. Park pushed through the gathering crowd, her face set with determination. "Check his ID. Now." She'd already called the real ICU attending physician, who was currently racing back from his lunch break at the cafeteria. The man they knew as Dr. Winters had been in Olivia's room for nearly an hour, alone with her charts and her IV line. The security guard pulled a wallet from the suspect's pocket. The ID inside read Eric Mercer, orderly from a different hospital entirely. Apollo's growl deepened as Officer Reeves read the name aloud. "Get a talk screen on Officer Martinez's blood stat," Dr. Park ordered, already running back toward the ICU. "And lock down her room. No one goes in or out without my direct authorization." Jason kept a firm grip on Apollo's leash as they followed her. The 9 officers' training was warring with his instincts. He wanted to stay and guard the prisoner, but Olivia needed him more. The elevator doors closed on Eric Mercer's face, now twisted with a mixture of pain and something darker. He wasn't talking, but his eyes said enough. This wasn't over. Back in the ICU, Olivia's room had become a flurry of action. The real Dr. Benjamin Wilson, 30 years older than the imposter and wearing a colorful bow tie, was reviewing her charts with growing concern. "These medication orders," he muttered. "They're all wrong. Look at these dosages." Apollo whined softly, pressing against Jason's leg. The handler knew that sound. It was the same noise Apollo made when he needed to indicate something but couldn't bark or scratch to show location. Dr. Park noticed, too. "What is it, boy?" she asked, kneeling beside him. "What are you trying to tell us?" Apollo's gaze fixed on the small refrigerator in the corner of Olivia's room, the one used to store certain medications that needed to be kept cold. Dr. Park followed his line of sight and moved toward it slowly. "Wait," she said, stopping halfway. "Officer Reeves, could you have Apollo check this area like he would for other substances?" Jason nodded, understanding immediately. "Search, Apollo. Find it." The command released Apollo from his formal heel position. He moved methodically around the refrigerator, nose working overtime, before sitting abruptly and staring at the unit's base. The Universal 9 signal. Target located. When maintenance removed the refrigerator's bottom panel, they found a small package taped to the compressor. Inside were several vials of clear liquid, unmarked, except for a small symbol that made Jason's blood run cold. The same tattoo they'd glimpsed on one of the smugglers at Westridge International before all hell broke loose. "Son of a," Jason whispered, pulling out his phone. "This goes way beyond an attack. They followed her here. They knew exactly where she'd be taken," Dr. Park murmured, documenting everything. "The question is, how many more of them are there? And what exactly did Officer Martinez stumble onto at that airport?" Apollo's ears twitched. Footsteps, a shadow passing the door's window. The night shift was just beginning, and Apollo never slept on watch. Scared isn't the same as broken. Apollo remembered the first time Olivia had brought him a puzzle box filled with treats. Other handlers used simple food rewards. Olivia challenged him to think. "Bad guys don't play fair," she told him, watching him work out the complex locking mechanism. "We need to be smarter, faster, and trust each other." Complete. A noise in the hallway snapped Apollo back to the present. His ears pricked forward, but it was just an orderly wheeling medication carts. Every member of the night staff had been triple-checked after the incident with the fake doctor. But Apollo wasn't taking chances. Not after what happened at the airport. His mind wandered again, this time to their first real bust together. They'd been tracking a suspect through an abandoned warehouse when the floor gave way. Olivia had fallen, and Apollo had ignored every training protocol, breaking from his position to grab her tactical vest with his teeth, holding her until backup arrived. The department had wanted to discipline her for not maintaining 9 protocols. "My dog, my rules," she'd said. "He made a judgment call. I'm alive because he thinks for himself." Thunder rolled outside the hospital windows, and Apollo felt his muscles tense. Storms always took him back to that night 6 months ago when everything had started to unravel. They'd been working late, Olivia reviewing cold cases, while Apollo dozed under her desk. The file had been nothing special, a smuggling operation from 4 years back. But something in those papers had made Olivia's heart race. Apollo had smelled her fear before she'd even realized she was afraid. She'd made 3 calls that night. The first to her supervisor went straight to voicemail. The second to an unlisted number that Apollo had memorized by the way Olivia's fingers shook while dialing. The third call never went through. That's when they'd noticed the black SUV following them home. A soft moan from the hospital bed jerked Apollo to attention. Olivia's fingers twitched, and for a moment her eyelids fluttered. Apollo whined softly, pressing his nose against her hand. Apollo whined softly, pressing his nose against her hand. The doctors had reduced her sedation, hoping she'd wake up naturally, but warned it could take time. "She's fighting," Dr. Park said quietly from the doorway, startling Apollo. He hadn't heard her approach. He was getting tired. "Just like you fought, didn't you? When everyone else had given up on you?" Apollo watched the young doctor check Olivia's vitals. In the dim light, he could see dark circles under her eyes. She hadn't left the hospital either, working well past her shift to monitor Olivia personally. She reminded him of his partner. The same quiet determination. The same refusal to accept things at face value. "I pulled her records," Dr. Park continued, more to herself than to Apollo. 4 years with the department, highest arrest record in the 9 unit. But it's the small things that stand out. The notes about rehabilitating an aggressive dog. The complaints filed against her for excessive investigation of routine cases. She looked down at Apollo. "You two weren't just doing your jobs, were you? You were looking for something specific, something that got her shot." Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the room in stark white. For a moment, Apollo saw another flash. Muzzle fire in a dark terminal. Olivia's body falling. The smell of gunpowder and betrayal. The same smell that had clung to the fake doctor's clothes. Olivia's fingers twitched again, and this time they curled weakly around Apollo's muzzle. Her breathing changed, shallow but faster, fighting to surface from the darkness that had held her for 2 days. Dr. Park rushed to check her pupils. "Officer Martinez? Olivia? Can you hear me?" Apollo knew that look on Olivia's face. The same determination he'd seen the day she'd refused to give up on an angry, frightened dog that everyone else had written off. She was coming back to him, and when she did, they would finish what they'd started at the airport, because Olivia had taught him more than just commands and protocols. She taught him that some battles were worth any risk, that loyalty meant fighting even when the odds were impossible. And most importantly, she taught him that the most dangerous enemies weren't the ones who bared their teeth. They were the ones who smiled while reaching for the knife. Another round of thunder shook the windows. Somewhere in the city, The people who had tried to kill his partner were realizing their plan had failed. They would be coming again, with new disguises, new tricks, new ways to silence what Olivia had discovered. But they didn't know what Apollo knew. That love was stronger than fear, that trust could overcome any training, and that some partnerships went soul deep. Olivia had saved him once, giving him purpose when he'd lost all hope. Now it was his turn to save her. He was backing away, positioning himself between the door and the ventilation grate in the corner. The scent hit them a moment later, bitter, chemical, wrong. "Gas!" Jason shouted. But Apollo was already in motion. He leaped at the nearest fire alarm, jaws clamping down on the plastic cover. The shriek of the alarm mixed with a sudden hiss from the vents. Emergency protocols kicked in instantly. Fire doors slammed shut as the ventilation system reversed, sucking the contaminated air out of the building. In the chaos of evacuation, no one noticed the dark-suited men slipping away, or the unmarked vans speeding from the parking lot. Hours later, in a secure wing of Central General Hospital across town, Olivia Martinez finally opened her eyes. The room was different, the view unfamiliar, but Apollo's head resting on her bed was exactly where it should be. "Hey, partner," she whispered hoarsely. Apollo's tail thumped against the floor as Dr. Park rushed to check her vitals. "Did we get them?" Olivia asked weakly. Jason stepped into her line of sight. "Not all of them. Not yet. But thanks to Apollo, we've got enough evidence to blow this whole thing wide open. The FBI's task force is involved now. The legitimate one, not those imposters from yesterday morning." Olivia's hand found Apollo's ear, scratching that special spot that made his eyes close in contentment. "Good boy," she murmured. "I knew you'd figure it out." But Apollo kept one ear perked, one eye open. The game wasn't over. The people behind this had connections everywhere, resources they hadn't even discovered yet. And Olivia was still their loose end. Outside the new hospital room, Detective Elena Vargas coordinated with genuine federal agents, their radios crackling with updates. The news was breaking across every channel. A massive pharmaceutical smuggling ring, corrupted military contractors, compromised airport security. Yet as the sun set on another city evening, Apollo knew the real battle was just beginning, because somewhere in the city a phone was ringing in a very exclusive office, and on the other end of that line, someone was very, very angry that Olivia Martinez was still alive. They had tried to silence her with bullets. They had tried to silence her with poison. They had failed. Apollo settled into his guard position, watching the new room's single door. Let them try again. This time he'd be ready. The emergency generators of Central General hummed to life as the city grid went dark. One by one, entire blocks disappeared into the night, the blackout spreading like spilled ink across the skyline. Apollo's ears pricked up at the distant sound of sirens. "This is no coincidence," Olivia said from her hospital bed, her voice stronger now after 3 days of recovery. She'd insisted on keeping the lights off in her room, letting their eyes adjust to the darkness. "They're making their move." Dr. Park checked the backup systems controlling Olivia's monitors. "Security's doubled on this floor, and we've got genuine FBI agents at every—" She stopped as Apollo suddenly stood, nose working the air. The Belgian Malinois moved to the door, his body language setting off every alarm in Olivia's trained mind. This wasn't his alert pose for danger. This was something else. Recognition. "Apollo?" Olivia started to sit up, but Jason gently pressed her back. "Stay down," he whispered, hand moving to his service weapon. "What is it, boy?" The answer came in a cascade of failures. First, the backup generators stuttered. Then the electronic locks on the secure ward clicked open. Finally, the computers at the nurses' station went dark, taking the security cameras with them. "Well," a familiar voice drawled from the doorway, "isn't this cozy?" Chief Thomas Blackwell of Central City PD stepped into the dim room, his badge catching what little light remained. Behind him, 2 men in tactical gear secured the hallway. The man Olivia had trusted as her supervisor for 4 years looked different now, colder, calculating. "You should have stayed unconscious, Martinez," he said, closing the door. "Would have been easier that way." Apollo's growl was pure thunder, but he held his position, waiting for Olivia's command. She'd taught him that patience in the face of betrayal. "How long?" Olivia asked, her hand inching toward the nurse call button. "How long have you been helping them move product through my airport?" Blackwell's laugh was bitter coffee and old regrets. "Your airport? That's always been your problem, Martinez. Too proprietary about your territory. Too many questions about cargo manifests that weren't your concern." "Those drugs are killing people," Olivia shot back. "Kids are dying from whatever cocktail your military friends are cooking up in those labs." "It's bigger than drugs," Blackwell said, drawing his weapon. "The pharmaceuticals, they're just the packaging." "What's inside?" He smiled, and it was all teeth. "Well, that's what your 4-legged partner kept sniffing out, wasn't it?" Something that shouldn't exist yet. Apollo's muscles bunched, reading Olivia's subtle hand signal. Years of partnership had taught them to communicate in silence. "Biological weapons," Olivia said. The pieces finally clicked. "Hidden in legitimate medical supplies. That's why you needed airport access. Military contractors smuggling in the components piece by piece." "Give the lady a prize." Blackwell raised his gun. "And now it's time for—" He never finished the sentence. Apollo launched himself at Blackwell's gun arm just as Olivia yanked the curtains closed, plunging the room into total darkness. The chief's shot went wide, shattering the window. The chaos that followed was a symphony of snarls and shouts. Jason tackled one of the tactical officers, while Dr. Park hit the emergency lockdown override, sealing the ward. Olivia rolled from her bed, ignoring the pain that shot through her healing wounds. In the darkness, Apollo was a force of nature. Olivia had trained him to fight smart, not just hard. He didn't go for the obvious attack. Instead, he caught Blackwell's sleeve, dragging him off balance. The chief's head caught the edge of a medical cart with a satisfying crack. But Blackwell's men were professionals. One of them managed to get Apollo in a chokehold, tactical armor protecting him from the dog's teeth. Olivia saw the glint of a knife. "Apollo, shift!" she screamed. Their special command, one she'd created just for him, inspired by his fighting ring past. Apollo limped for a split second, causing his attacker to loosen his grip. Then he exploded into motion, using the man's own arm as a springboard to launch himself at Blackwell, who was struggling to his feet. The chief's backup weapon clattered across the floor, spinning to a stop at Olivia's feet. She didn't hesitate. "Freeze!" Her voice cracked like a whip. "Apollo, hold!" Apollo's jaws locked onto Blackwell's shoulder, not breaking skin but promising worse if he moved. The tactical team, seeing their leader pinned, froze in place. The cavalry arrived moments later. Detective Vargas, leading a joint FBI-ATF task force that had been watching the hospital, waiting for exactly this play. As Blackwell was cuffed and led away, he spat words at Olivia that made Apollo's hackles rise. "You have no idea what you've started," he sneered. "There are people above me, above all of us. They'll never let this see light." Olivia scratched Apollo's ears as federal agents swept the room. "Maybe," she said, watching her former boss disappear into custody. "But they've never dealt with a partner like mine." Hours later, as the city's power gradually returned, Olivia sat on her hospital bed with Apollo's head in her lap. Dr. Park was treating the few scratches he'd sustained in the fight, but his eyes never left Olivia's face. "You know what this means," Detective Vargas said from the doorway. "We'll need you both to testify. There's going to be pressure from places we can't even imagine." Olivia smiled, feeling Apollo's steady warmth against her side. "Let them come," she said softly. "We're ready." Because that's what Blackwell had never understood. Apollo wasn't just a dog with good training. He was a survivor who'd learned to fight against impossible odds. And Olivia? She was the one person who'd seen past his scars to the hero underneath. Together, they were more than a 9-unit. They were a promise kept, a trust unbroken, a love that no amount of corruption could touch. And they were just getting started. The morning sun painted the city skyline in shades of hope as Olivia Martinez stood before the federal grand jury. 2 weeks later, Max sat perfectly still beside her witness chair, his presence a steady comfort as she detailed the web of corruption they'd uncovered. "It started with a scent," Olivia explained to the assembled jury. "Apollo detected something unusual in a routine cargo inspection. Something that didn't match any known drug profiles in our database. The evidence was damning. Chief Blackwell's arrest had triggered a domino effect, exposing a network that stretched from Westridge International's cargo bays to military contractors across 3 continents. The modified pharmaceuticals weren't just designer drugs, FBI Special Agent Catherine Walsh confirmed, standing beside a display of seized documentation. They were prototypes for something far more sinister. Officer Martinez and Apollo didn't just stop a drug operation, they prevented a potential global catastrophe. Back at Horizon Medical, Dr. Park was implementing revolutionary changes. The hospital board had unanimously approved her proposal for an enhanced 9 security program, with Olivia and Apollo as special advisors. "The days of vulnerable medical facilities are ending," Dr. Park told Olivia during a training session. They watched as Apollo demonstrated detection techniques to a new team of hospital security dogs. "Your partner's instincts saved more than just your life. He showed us that sometimes the best medical breakthrough is a wet nose and a willing heart." The investigation expanded rapidly. Detective Vargas's task force uncovered similar operations at airports across the country. One by one, the corrupt officials and compromised contractors were falling, but Olivia knew the fight wasn't over. "They'll try again," she said during a briefing with the FBI's Bioweapons Division. "Different airports, different methods, but they'll try." Apollo's ears perked up at her tone. He'd been officially awarded the department's Medal of Valor, but the Belgian Malinois seemed more proud of his new specialized tactical vest, designed by Dr. Park herself, with enhanced armor and built-in detection sensors. "Let them try," Agent Walsh replied, watching Apollo work with the newest 9 recruits. "Thanks to you two, we know what to look for now. Every airport in the country is implementing your protocols." The changes were visible everywhere. Hospital security had been revolutionized, with 9 units becoming standard at major medical facilities. Airport screening procedures were transformed, focusing on the indicators Apollo had first detected. Olivia and her faithful partner had sparked a paradigm shift in how America protected its most vulnerable points. Late that evening, Olivia sat in her favorite spot on the hospital's rooftop garden, a peaceful retreat Dr. Park had created for staff and patients alike. Apollo lay at her feet, ever vigilant but finally relaxed. The city stretched out before them, its lights twinkling like stars fallen to earth. "You know what, partner?" Olivia scratched behind Apollo's ears, earning a contented sigh. Sometimes the biggest heroes are the ones who never stop believing in what they smell. Apollo's tail thumped against the ground. He might not understand the commendations, the press conferences, or the policy changes his actions had inspired, but he understood what mattered. His partner was safe, their city was safer, and there would always be more bad guys to catch. A door opened behind them, and Apollo's head turned sharply before relaxing. Dr. Park appeared with coffee and, more importantly, Apollo's favorite training treats. "The FBI called," she said, settling beside them. "They're expanding the program nationwide. Every major hospital and airport will have a 9-unit trained in your methods." Olivia smiled, watching a plane take off from Westridge International, its lights bright against the dark sky. "Hear that, Apollo? You're starting a revolution." Apollo just nestled closer to his partner, his eyes scanning the horizon. He didn't need to understand revolutions or legacies. He only needed to know that wherever Olivia went, whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Because that's what partners do. And somewhere in the city below, a cargo plane was landing, its hold filled with mysterious crates that needed inspection. Apollo's ears pricked up at Olivia's slight shift in posture. He knew that tone, that energy. Time to go to work. Some heroes wear capes, others wear badges. The best ones wear fur and follow their noses straight into history. The bond that transforms, lives the story of Apollo and Olivia, teaches us about partnership that transcends ordinary definition. Their journey reveals profound truths about loyalty, trust, and the remarkable connection between humans and dogs that has evolved over thousands of years. Dogs, like Apollo, possess an extraordinary ability to perceive what humans cannot. Their acute senses, particularly their remarkable olfactory capabilities, allow them to detect dangers invisible to us. A dog's nose contains up to 300 million olfactory receptors compared to our mere 6 million, making them walking biochemical detection systems. But Apollo's story demonstrates that a dog's true power lies not just in his biological advantages, but in his willingness to use those gifts in service to those he loves. True loyalty, as Apollo shows us, isn't blind obedience. It's a conscious choice renewed daily. The decision to stand guard when others retreat, to remain alert when others sleep, to protect without being asked. When Apollo refused to leave Olivia's side despite danger, he embodied the purest form of dedication that asks nothing in return. This selfless commitment mirrors what we all seek in our deepest relationships: unwavering support through our darkest hours. Trust forms the foundation of Apollo and Olivia's partnership. She trusted his instincts when others dismissed them as mere animal behavior. This mutual faith, a handler believing in her dog's abilities and a dog trusting his human's judgment, created a bond stronger than any tactical training program. Their story reminds us that true trust isn't about blind faith, but about recognizing another's unique perspective and valuing it as equal to our own. The courage demonstrated throughout their ordeal speaks to resilience that emerges when we fight not just for ourselves, but for those we love. Apollo didn't act purely from training or instinct, but from something deeper, a courage born from connection. This transformation from fear to bravery through relationship mirrors how human bonds can help us transcend our limitations and face challenges we could never conquer alone. Perhaps most powerfully, Apollo's story illuminates how difference becomes strength in true partnership. His canine perception complemented Olivia's human reasoning. Her strategic thinking enhanced his instinctual responses. Neither was complete without the other. This complementary relationship reminds us that our differences, whether between species, backgrounds, or perspectives, aren't obstacles to overcome but potential sources of extraordinary power when joined in common purpose. The ripple effects of their partnership extended far beyond their immediate circle, transforming institutions and saving countless lives. This broader impact teaches us that authentic connections don't just enhance individual lives, they can change systems and societies. When we fully embrace the unique capabilities of those different from ourselves, we create possibilities previously unimaginable. In our increasingly isolated modern world, Apollo and Olivia's story offers a template for the connections we all crave. Relationships built on mutual respect, trust, and recognition of each other's inherent value. Their partnership transcended the typical boundaries between human and animal, becoming something greater than either could achieve alone. So perhaps the next time you look into your dog's eyes, remember Apollo. Remember that the bond you share isn't just companionship, but a connection to something ancient and profound. The possibility of two different species choosing to become something greater together than either could be apart. What remarkable partnerships have transformed your own life, and what might be possible if we approached all our relationships, with animals, with nature, with each other, with the same openness, trust, and mutual respect that defined Apollo and Olivia. Thank you so much for joining me for this story. If you've experienced a special connection with a dog or other animal in your life, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Your stories matter and inspire others. And if you enjoyed this tale of loyalty and courage, please consider subscribing to the channel for more heartwarming stories that celebrate the extraordinary bonds between humans and animals.